And as well as Marco, I mean, these guys are just stepping up and helping us make this conference great. So I'll leave you with them. Go for it.
Hey. Whoa, 1, 2. Okay, cool. Thanks everyone for attending the talk. This is going to be very different from the previous talk that was here in the room. We're going to be talking about security automation and a whole new field called SOAR and what that's about. I'm going to talk very briefly about what SOAR is and what the platform is, what it does. And I'm going to dive right into like use cases and playbooks and what people are actually doing with this in security teams and blue teams right now. My name is Lior, originally from Israel, moved out to California about 7 months ago. I work in Cupertino at Demisto headquarters. And so full disclosure, Demisto is a vendor and what we do is related to SOAR, but everything I'm going to show you today has nothing to do with like the commercial aspect. It's just going to be about automation in general and what these platforms are about and why people are even interested in this whole idea. We've been doing it for about 3 years. Right now, Gartner has like a report on it and there's like an official acronym and everything. We were doing it before it had a name. But the whole idea, and I know this conference is a bit different from like management and other conferences I've been speaking at. Thanks. You can leave it. That's all right. Thanks. Sure, I can turn it off. So I know the people here are a lot more technical than some other audiences I've been speaking to. So I can tell you guys that the idea is to take all of the security tool set that you have at a typical company, right, which can be dozens of different tools, sandboxes, EDRs, SIMs, whatever, Elasticsearch, cloud security, VirusTotal, a bunch of like threat intelligence, tips like MISP or Threat Connect, putting it all in one place, talking to all these different platforms through APIs rather than actually going and like swivel chairing, we've heard it called, where people have like 50 tabs open and they keep jumping in between these tools, copy pasting stuff across, like looking stuff up on VirusTotal and then pivoting, finding other IOCs, then going back to the sandbox, searching for those. So why not just use APIs and have playbooks that are essentially pre-planned workflows and just go across all these APIs, right? So what I'm going to be talking about today is what to actually solve using this tool and what you can do. Part of the concept, so taking all the data, putting it in one place is not new, right? We do it with SIM, we do it with like Elasticsearch, but the whole concept is that you need to eventually have some actions. You need to go out and do something, because if all you do is analytics, eventually you're going to hit what's called like an action wall. So eventually you do some analytics and then you have to go out and do something. You have to like detonate it in a sandbox, or you have to go online to some online source and query it, because they're not going to give you all the data for VirusTotal, right? You have to go online and run a query, get the data back, and then keep going. So once you need to do one of these actions, you actually need to reach out to an API and make a call and get data back. Sometimes you even have to go out to like an external team, so like open a ticket, wait for them to solve something, and then you can keep going. So with traditional analytics, once that happens, you're stuck. You need to go out and have a person do this. So that does not allow you to apply automation first and people second, right? So the whole idea, like I said, is to connect all of these different sources into one place, trigger alerts, and then actually handle them using all of these different tools from one place, which is also easier to train people on. We know that the churn for security analysts is very high, so people, get hired, people leave. It's hard to train them. If you have it all in one place, it's much easier to train people. And they don't need to learn the entire platform just to get something done. The whole idea is to connect this information and tools from all these different domains all in one place, right? So you have threat information, whether that's like exploit out in the wilds, or new vulnerabilities that surface, or information about threat actors, IOCs, stuff you get from ISACs. That's all threat information. That has nothing to do with your specific company. Then you have assets like IT. You have all your security tools. right, including cloud stuff. So you have to kind of bridge the on-prem stuff that you have with all of the cloud information, cloud assets. And that's all using different tools. And then you have your business. That's like, who are the C-levels? Who are the most important people in the company? Who are my customers? Where are they in the world? If somebody's logging in from Brazil, do I have customers in Brazil? Should someone be logging into my customer portal from there? The threat info you get from whoever, like VirusTotal or one of the vendors that sell like dark web intelligence, they're not going to tell you that. You have to know that about your own company, and you have to store that information somewhere. So let's jump right into the use cases. First thing people always talk about, it's not sexy, but it's costing people time and they want to automate it, is phishing investigations, right? So people get these emails in their SOC mailbox, like, hey, I got this email, looks like phishing, can you help me out and figure out if it's bad or not, right? So what do you need to do, right? First thing, you can automate an email right back to the user, and you can do this all in Python. If you want to code it all yourself and create all your own connectors for APIs, you could do it all yourself. The idea by using like a SOAR platform is that it saves you time because all the connectors are there, the workflow engine is there. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. If you do want to code it all yourself, you can, right? So the whole idea is to send an email back to the user saying, hey, thanks for reporting it. We're looking into that email. And then extract, like take apart the email. If there's like an MSG or EML file in there, you need to parse that out, get the body of the email, the headers, extract all of the IP addresses, URLs, domains, run that past all of your different sources. And I'm not telling you which source to use, right? You need feeds that are relevant to your industry and to your needs. So once you have all like your tip connected and any online services, such as, you know, VirusTotal, RiskIQ, PassiveTotal, there's a whole bunch of services online where you can query a domain or URL and check whether it's a known phishing URL. And if you're getting updates from like your ISAC or other partners and putting all of that in your tip, whether it's, you know, MISP, Threat Connect, one of those, Anomaly, you can use the API on the fly to just query that and check whether it's known, whether it's been in any past events. You can detonate if there's any attachments. You can actually throw those in the sandbox, wait for it to detonate, and then get back any IOCs and then run those as well. So far we did not need any human involvement at all. That can all be automated. And then essentially if there's anything that leads us to believe that it's a bad email, you can actually go and use the API for your mailbox or your like Exchange Web Services is one. Google Suite has an API. You can use that to search all the other mailboxes. Let's figure out, did anyone else get the same email? Is this a campaign? And you can actually mutate some of the queries. So you can take like a subject and generalize it, relax the queries a bit instead of looking for an exact match. And that way you can find similar emails. And then you can actually go out and delete. So at that point, that's where it helps to have some kind of human involvement in the loop. You couldn't actually go out, search for the emails, and then once you find, say, 20 or 30 emails, you just call someone in and say, hey, here's what I found. Is it cool if I go ahead and delete all of this? Because you don't want to have end-to-end automation that is potentially destructive. You know, the idiom is that with a privileged account, you can shoot yourself in the foot, but with automation, you can shoot everybody in the foot, right? By just firing once. So you want to make sure that that doesn't happen. You want to make sure that you have like a stop point where a person can look at it and see that it makes sense. And then once they say yes, then you can go out, like the automation can go out and block and delete everything for them, right? But you do want to have some kind of judgment in the middle. And the whole idea is to have some of the hunting as well. Is so if you have like EDR, if you have your logs for your web proxy, you can actually use those APIs to go out and see, did anyone click on this email? If somebody clicked on that URL, you might need to escalate that investigation to their endpoints, to their machines, and then go from there. And you might have to assign an entirely different team to do that, or multiple teams. And then figure out if there's already malware on there talking to like a C2 or whatever. But that really helps you if you have 1,000 emails a week, all of this goes through automatically. So by the time you go in, you actually have it already triaged, waiting for you, and you can figure out which ones you should look at first, because you can figure out which ones actually had some kind of malware dropped, right, or people clicked on them, right? If not, you could potentially have a person look at the email and see whether there's something that doesn't make sense in there, etc. But you already have most of the triage done, right? And you could also close out the investigation right then and there. So that's just the first use case, right? Another one is suspicious account activity, right? Somebody's logging in. There's a login from like in the middle of the night or from a location that doesn't make sense, etc. So instead of having people get on the phone all day, call people up, hey, you know, here's the info, we saw you logging in, is it you? You can actually use something like Slack. You can use a Slack bot, attach that to your automation platform, and just send them the message and tell them, hey, we saw a login last night at like 2 a.m. Was this you? And then they reply yes or no. And if they reply, yeah, it was me, you know, I needed to do it, 1, 2, 3, you can just close it out. So now, instead of having to call a person to do this, you can reach the false positive conclusion totally in an automated way. So you don't need to tie up your people doing this kind of work. And they can spend their time using their brains and doing more interesting and relevant work, which we all know we have, right? There's a lot of work in SOC teams these days. Another one is you get some kind of update from like your ISAC or from a partner organization, any kind of source, right? And the first thing you want to know is this relevant to me, right? You want to hunt across all the different tools that you have, whether it's like your SIM, EDR, looking in your web proxy logs, looking at network traffic. If you have something like RSA Net Witness, where you can actually search, did anyone click this URL? And in one case, I was working with a customer. They actually had 10 different deployments of RSA Net Witness, one in each country. And they had to go across all these different UIs and run the query for the same URL to check, did anyone click on this? And then they compiled this CSV report, and they had people doing this for hours and hours. So instead, we just built an automation, talked to all these different RSA Net Witness platforms, and just create a CSV that says hit, country, time, and that's it, right? So you get the endpoint that actually communicated with URL, done. So that's the whole idea. You listen to some kind of source, like a mailbox, or if you have a REST API, somebody can actually push an update into your automation platform or tool, and then you parse out the IOCs, and then you actually can create the queries on the fly. So if you need to generate like a Net Witness query or a SIM query, you can take each IOC. You have some code in there or like a step to wrap the IOC in the right format for that specific tool that you're going to query. And then you can just get all of the hits. At that point, if something was found, it can actually go out and ping you. But if this happens at like 3 a.m., you don't need it to wake you up just to run a bunch of searches, right? It can run the searches, and then if there's any hits, then it can wake you up. And if this is actually a company that you're partnered with, you can approve whether it's going to send the hits back. So you can actually share whether this was seen on both your companies. If these are like two banks and they want to see if the same actor is active on both of them, that can happen in an automated way. So they can send a bunch of IOCs across and run some searches and then get back all of the hits. So similarly, hunting is looking back. So you're running a search on everything that's happened, but now you want to use these IOCs and put them in watch lists. So if it happens again, so if at any point in the future some of these IOCs are visible, you're going to get alerted, right? So most of these tools like EDRs and NDR, like network controls, web proxies, they have blacklists or watch lists. You can actually go out and deploy. Even something like Carbon Black or CrowdStrike have block lists. CrowdStrike does not allow you to put anything in block mode via the API, only watch, but still you're going to get an alert if it sees that hash or domain, etc. So it's good to deploy those out to your controls. Don't just leave them at the data analytics level. Yeah, this is also something that costs teams a lot of time today. And in one case, we automated this, and we saved like 6 figures amount of dollars a year for just, saving people's time. So indicator sharing, that's just compiling that report that's going to go across, just like I said earlier. There's a couple of implementation details, like do they want to use like an API to get those? Do they want to use something like Taxi, which is a protocol to communicate across different tools? Do they want like an email with an encrypted zip inside? So there's a bunch of, or PGP, so there's a bunch of details. You can have all of that automated and ready for you so that when you're about to share a list of like hashes, IPs, any kind of machine readable, even YARA rules, you can have all of this waiting for you, and then you can actually send those out. Severity scoring, it's also a super simple use case, but it keeps people keep asking us for this. Essentially, you have a bunch of alerts. You want to collect all of the possible indicators, including detonation, and then actually try to score all of these alerts. So people are trying to prioritize. They have lists of thousands and tens of thousands of alerts, and they're trying to figure out which of these actually have IOCs that I know about, that are getting hits on my threat intel that I have. So the whole point is actually collect as many indicators as you can around the alert and expand. One example is if you have a domain and you want to go to passive DNS and see what the resolutions have been, which other IP addresses, which are the related domains, etc. And then once you have all of these indicators, if you also have any entities from your own company that are involved, you can actually run those against those lists that we discussed. So let's say there's something really bad, but it's on a test server that some developer is playing with. It's not that bad, right? Nobody cares about that. But if it's a mission critical server that's actually running my business, then I really want to know about it. So same thing about usernames, right? If it's a C-level, if it's like a DBA, if it's a domain admin, I really want to know about it. So I want it to be at the top. When I have my analysts working some queue, I want them to be looking at the most important stuff first. So another application of these automation platforms is vulnerability management, right? So you have a bunch of vulnerabilities that get published. You want to check which assets that I have are actually running this software. Are they exposed to the internet? Are they exploitable? And you also want to know which scans have been run, right? So where has it been discovered? And you want to prioritize and eventually patch, right? So you want to manage your patch cycles, which servers you patch first, and you can potentially even use the API for your patching tool to trigger those patching procedures. And once all of this is done, before you actually close the case, you can run the scan again and validate. So make sure that it's really patched, right? Sure. So how long are we dedicating for this? Oh, they said they told me like 45 minutes. So do you wanna figure out the schedule and let me know? Yeah, just let me know what the new schedule is. So this is another thing that people are spending a lot of time on, is just getting tickets from people who are asking for whitelists, right? So there's like a web proxy, there's some kind of control, and they want to have their website whitelisted. All people are really doing is looking up those websites, figuring out if it's good or bad, and then going out to the web proxy and whitelisting it. Why can't we just automate that? Just use the APIs for that. Run a category check, run a check on a bunch of threat intel tools. Make sure that it's not a known bad URL. Make sure that it's not a category that we're not allowing in our company. And if it's not, then just whitelist it, right? And then close out the ticket and respond back to the user saying, hey, we actually approved your thing. I'm going to skip over these two. So this is, I'm going to go into something completely different right now. This is something I presented in London in June, using the exact same platform to actually do memory forensics automation. So let's say we have an endpoint that is suspicious. We can actually go out, either drop WinPMem or use like Carbon Black, you can actually ask it for a mem dump from a given endpoint and get back the memory dump, sorry, and then dump that on a new VM. You can spin up like a SIFT VM, either on Amazon or VMware, drop that memory image in there, and then start running a bunch of volatility plugins on it, and get out the IP addresses, hashes, get the loaded drivers, and then use all of your other tools like your threat intel platform or online sources to actually look up all of these indicators. And once you have all of your different memory forensics investigations on the same platform, you can actually correlate. So if you see the same driver across 5 investigations, it's going to automatically correlate. If you have like a graph database sort of view, you can actually see that this memory dump is related to all the other memory dumps. And you can actually find campaigns across different endpoints. So this is an example of a logical flow that I created, a playbook that I created for memory forensics, using a bunch of different volatility plugins and extracting IOCs and running it against reputation sources. Another scenario is you have an endpoint that you suspect of being patient 0. So you think it's actually going to be the point of entry through which an attacker got in your network. So you want to collect a set of information to try and assess, does this make sense or not? Are my hypotheses true or not? In some cases, you have 10 or 20 different servers, right? And you think maybe one of these was the original point of entry. So how do I score them? You can actually go out to your vulnerability scanning platform and run a query to check, do I have any unpatched vulnerabilities that are known, but I actually haven't gotten around to patching them yet on this server, right? So if you have like an Apache struts vulnerability open on that server and it's unpatched and it's something that's online, then okay, that's a pretty good lead that you need to investigate, right? There's a good chance that that was the actual point of entry. You can go out to EDR platform like Carbon Black, CrowdStrike, and look up activity on that host around the time of the alert. So if you have any suspicious network activity that points to that endpoint, you can actually run a search plus 5 minutes around that alert and figure out, okay, is there anything interesting going on here, like new processes, any interesting files being written, etc. You can go out to your network sources like your SIM, or any malicious domains that are being queried around this time, right? So I think you get the idea. You can collect all of these different pieces of data around each of these platforms. Then you pivot from that to reputation sources, and you can put a score in each of these. And then you can prioritize your time. This is about saving your time and having the platform work for you rather than the other way around. Another cool application that you can do once you have this, you have all of your threat intel sources that you're using, and you also track all the cases that you're closing in your investigations. So you can actually say, how many cases that I've closed or investigations that I've done actually use these sources? And you can score your sources and figure out, am I getting the value out of these threat intel sources? Are they really leading to closure of cases and verdicts, right? Once you have all that information in one place, you can actually create a flow to score each of the sources according to the cases you close over time and create a report out of that. Another use case that's totally different, and that's why I decided to include it in here. This is actually a healthcare company that has a PKI that they manage, and they needed to track, somebody was just doing this all by hand and it was a nightmare. To track when people's certificates expire, right? They had all these other companies they were talking to. They had to manage certificates for each one of them. So all they were doing is tracking, running a query every day. This was running like as a job. It's probably still running, right? They're still using it. Every 24 hours, run a query, check out all these certificates that are going to expire in the next 24 hours, right? And then go out to the CRM, in this case it was Salesforce, right? Or ticketing management, whatever it is you're using, and just email or open a ticket for the for that account, for that user, and tell them, hey, your certificate's about to expire, you need to actually renew it, right? At that point, it will actually wait for a set amount of days and pull that ticket and check whether they actually replied And if they didn't, then it's going to escalate. But this is all being done using the same platform, using the same automation tool. As long as you have all of these connectors to all the tools that you use, and you have the APIs to get stuff done, you can create all of these flows all in one place, right? And so a couple of tips about if you want to, whether you build this yourself or you go out and you use like a community edition for some of these tools, or even if you have like something in your company, you need to find the right scenarios for you. So find something that has good value for your time investment, something that is a real pain point in your company today, so you can show value on this quickly, because it's a new thing, and the moment you bring it in, people are going to look to see that value, right? So why are you introducing this? Show me how it's really saving time and bringing me value. Before you start, make sure you have the access. Make sure that your tool can actually connect to the APIs through the network. If you have to talk to like a firewall team, if you have to talk to IT to get that approved, make sure you have the accounts or the API keys that can do these actions, right? So you need permissions if you're going to create tickets. Yeah. Oh. What time is it? Okay. Yeah, I got like a couple more minutes and then you're on. Make sure you know the logic that you want, right? There's no reason you can't plot out. Once you understand, okay, this tool can give me these services, right? Like EDR can allow you to run certain queries. Ticket management can allow you to like create tickets, open tickets, create tickets, run a search, update with like new information, right? Once you have all that, you can actually try to plot out or whiteboard what you want to do. So when you have the tooling, you can just start running right away. And avoid scope creep. Figure out, people often try to boil the ocean and just let's connect everything in one sitting. Don't do that. Figure out the use cases that you want. Figure out which APIs and tools are required to make those happen, which may be just 3 tools out of the 20 that you have. Connect those up, make sure that you have the actions and the commands that you need, and then make those use cases happen and track it over time. So you can say, how much time am I spending for each of these tasks before I have automation? Maybe it's like an hour or 30 minutes, and then I have like 20 of these a day. Great. Track that, and then after you apply automation, do that diff, right? Have a baseline, compare that, and then you can actually show how much time you're saving. And if you keep moving on to new scenarios, new tasks, it means you're doing it right. It means you're saving yourself time. I'm going to skip that one. Yeah. So no, I'm going to wrap up here. I just wanted to give you some pointers to some free, as in speech and beer stuff. This is stuff that we open source. It's all MIT licensed. It's Python and JavaScript code for connectors to a whole bunch of APIs, playbooks, scripts, building blocks that we have. And you can use these. And we also have a Slack community with about 4,000, I think it's about 5,000 by now, people. And they're just talking about security in general, automation. And if you need to get in touch with me, you can tweet me or drop me an email. And that's it. Any questions? Yeah. I think we have a question. So we are actually using, well, we have our own platform, right? So our playbooks are YAML files, and each of the tasks can be like a call to an API or its own Python module. And then you can run that Python module inside of a Docker container. So you can say, this Python script requires a bunch of software. I have a Docker container that has it all set up. So what happens is when it reaches that step in the workflow, it's going to spin up a Docker container, run that Python, and then get out a JSON output out of that. That all happens on the fly. But if you really wanted to, you could kind of take Ansible and try to create the right connectors and try to implement the same concept using Ansible, right? So any kind of automation workflow engine could potentially be used for the same. It's the same mindset, right? Yeah, same frame of mind. Cool. Thanks for your time and enjoy the rest of the conference.